Welcome back, episode 3. I'm going to answer some more questions for you and I've got a new view for you, change of scenery. First one I've got in front of me here is from Dean asking what my opinion is on when a rider, at what stage a rider should change their gear shift pattern to race shift, GP shift, reverse shift, whatever you call it. What that is, if you don't know, is instead of using the stock road pattern of 1 down, 5 up or 4 up, you switch the linkage around. It's simple. Most bikes you can just swap it around. Some you have to buy a part for, but you can then use 1 up and neutral, then 4 or 5 down. The reason for this on race track, or why by far the majority of races use this reverse gear shift pattern, is in some circumstances it makes the job easier. Regularly makes the job easier. To explain that, for example, the big one is coming out of a left-hander or going around a left-hander and you have to hook a gear up. It makes it almost impossible to get your foot under if you're using most of the ground clearance, and it makes it very easy to go up a gear if the pattern's reversed and you just have to move your foot forward, tap the lever, and then all the way out of that turn. Also, when you're going down a straight where the load is on the box, all that horsepower is going through the gears, you have more power and you're more precise standing on that lever, bang, 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 as you go down the straight, than you are with a weaker ankle lifting. You haven't got as much power or precision lifting as you have stamping. And on the way into the turn, it's pretty easy to lift the gear lever, through the box, because of the lack of power going through that gearbox at that time. That's the main reasons. It's not a given that it is necessary, because there's world champions out there that don't use it. They use road shift, but they're also that good they can ride around it. They don't want to change habit, whatever. But it is easier, So, at what stage and how to change? I remember when I changed from road shift to race shift pattern, was my first visit to Suzuka 8 Hour. I had to use the same bike. My partner in that race had race shift, and they said I had to get used to it. They were nice enough to warn me well ahead of time. I'd never been out of New Zealand before, so I thought, okay, I'll take I borrowed a bike, a 1000cc bike, because I didn't have one at the time. And thank you, Murray Carter, Andrew Stroud, who loaned it to me, just to get it in my head. And what happened is it was quite easy to do. It's like driving on the left if you used to driving on the right, or right if you used to on the left, until you don't think about it, And if you're in a hurry, you go the wrong way, and that's what happened to me. I thought, I've got this, no problem. And then I thought, right, I might as well try for a lap time. And as soon as I did that, I came out of a second gear left-hand turn, went wound it up, about to fire it on its right-hand side, and I hooked first instead of third. I went the wrong way, and it was like pulling on the handbrake on a car mid-turn going fast. It just spun out down the road, damaged Stroudy and Murray Carter's bike. They were very good about it, but it taught me a lesson is, when it comes the moment that you need instinct, it's not in there. It takes a long time to be in there. So what I recommend is, don't change your shift pattern for the first time when you're well into an event. Do it at the very beginning of an event, or even better, if you've got a road bike and you ride on the road, change that one as well, so you get some practice and it starts to become natural. The best way otherwise, if you only ride on track, is right at the beginning of the event, when you've got time to think and you're building up. It is best to do it then, when you're warming yourself up. I think it takes a little bit of time, but it's like the first time you do it, it's tricky. But now I can ride my trials and enduro bike with the original road pattern and switch to my road bike on track and not make a mistake. It's in there now. Well worth a try because it makes the job easy. Good luck. Another question here for you from Sean, asking my opinion on should you test multiple changes on a motorcycle in one time, or should you go through them one by one? And in general, I would answer always one by one, so you know exactly what each change did. But I can think of a couple of scenarios where three of them leap out at me, where I've got a little diagram here prepared where you try a harder rate spring, that starts off here down lower, because you've put less turns of preload on it. And that's two different things, spring rate change and a preload change, but they work in combination so you can get the crossover point further down. Otherwise they'd start off at the same point and then split, and you really want that sweet spot where you're testing a little bit into the stroke, not the very beginning. So yes, you'd try two things, a preload and a spring change in combination as one thing to test. Another thing would be a head angle change, like the angle of the forks, So say if you went from 22, 23 or 23, 24, kicked it out, or the other way. So if you went a little bit steeper on the head angle, you want to try the head angle change, not the trail change. And when you make it steeper, you get less trail. So often a chief mechanic would say, right, we're going to go a little bit steeper, but we're also going to make a smaller offset, the triple clamps at the top, a little bit smaller offset to keep the trail the same. So we're only checking on the head angle difference. He'll even move the front of the bike out a little bit at the headstock to keep the wheel in the same spot. So we're only trying one thing. So there's a combination of changes that allow you to change one thing, try one thing. So there's that. For example, a mechanic might want to try the bike higher, so you're going to raise the front and the rear and try, basically it's the crank where the center of gravity is higher, and he wants to know, is the bike better higher or lower? But it's two things. But in general, if you're going to try something on your bike and you want to know if it works or not, you need to try one thing at a time. Otherwise, it's so easy to get lost. As you can see, it's later in the day, and I thought it was really important to come back and add this little piece on the end of this answer, because I've just been talking about chassis, and it's important to mention that experienced riders, can handle changes in multiple areas, meaning chassis, like we've been talking about, they can handle a change. Then they could have a fueling change, so how that throttle responds and carburation, fueling, depending on your bike. Then they can handle a gearing change, whether it's an overall gearing or a ratio change in one gear, the electronics, engine braking. So you can change things in multiple areas and they can give you good feedback without getting lost. But the important thing is chassis-wise is because every change chassis-wise affects everywhere else, it's super important to make one change at a time in order not to get lost and understand what each change does. The other thing to mention, big help if you're getting into this, is to write down everything. So you already know every setting on your bike chassis-wise before you change something. Every clicker, every ride height, every spring, every preload, swing arm length. I'm talking the whole lot. As long as you know that, when you change things and over time, if the bike heads a different way, feels different, if you get lost, you know where to go back to. And, for example, you can look on your records and go, that's when I last felt it was good. Go back to there. Let's put that in, see if it's better than where we've ended up now. Next, we've got a really interesting question from Hemi Dave. What do the exceptional pro riders have that the rest of the pro riders don't? And it's a good one. I've thought a lot about it before for a lot of years, because I was one of the other pro riders, you know. At my time, it was Mick Doohan who was the exceptional one. Before us, it was Rainey and Schwantz. After us was Valentino, and then now it's Marquez, you know, with that exceptional ability. And first of all, I want to say what I always say is their natural ability, you know, like all sports people need a certain amount of natural ability, awesome skill and talent, and then a certain level of work ethic, drive, you know, want it so bad, you know, and to put the work in. Without both of those, you're snookered, you know. I've seen a lot of talent more than work ethic, and that's another subject, but I think the work ethic is more rare than the talent. Anyway, so they've got this amazing combination. Mick was the best I'd seen to that stage, and then I think now Mark probably has even superseded that, or at least equaled, but I think maybe even bettered it. They all have this incredible motivation, you know. For example, I first saw it when I was a training partner of Mick for 3 off seasons. We'd train 4 or 5 days a week, 3 to 5, depending on how often I'd turn up, because Mick didn't miss it. He's a machine. And I said to him one day, "You train hard." And he looked at me and said, hope Mick doesn't mind me talking about this. He said, "I want to line up on the grid on Sunday and know that I deserve it more than all of the others." You know? So that was like a mental strength for him, knowing he had put more work in than the others. Cool. They all have this preparation that is through the roof. They never stop thinking about how they can win, how they can be better. And then, along the same lines is the drive, the want for it. Mick won his 5 World Championships after horrendous injury, you know. So you have to want it a lot to go through all that and then get back on and then win, you know. It's truly amazing. Marquez is the last example I saw of it. Thailand, how much he wants it, you know. Okay, Valentino's showing us at the same time, because he's in his 40s and he's still racing at the front, and he obviously loves it, wants it, you know. He's got some incredible drive. Marquez is the best example recently in Thailand when he high-sided, I think, Friday morning and battered himself, you know, the whole paddock. I work in the pit lane and I could feel everyone go, "Here's our opportunity," you know, meaning, you know, this afternoon or this weekend Mark's going to be sore. He fully deserved the afternoon, you know, on the sofa. He'd been to medical centre, got taken away for scans and that, came back to the track. And the normal thing in that situation is to take it easy or take the afternoon off. Come back tomorrow, have another go at it, you know. He did, not because he had to, because he wanted to. He got on the bike and smashed everyone, went faster. It was truly awesome. I made my hair stand up. I was like, wow. So that's some descriptions of the incredible ability. Then the last one I would say they all have is the ability to adapt to the situation. Matt Oxley wrote a good article on it recently, and completely agree with him. That's what I've seen since Schwantz was probably the first time I saw it. I think it was at Suzuka, racing Rainey. They had awesome battles, like always. He started dropping back in the race and then came back forward again. And after the race, he got asked, you know, what happened? How did you manage that? What? He said, well, I lost grip or had a bad feeling, whatever it was back then. And this was like probably 89. I can't remember really well. And then he said that he changed his position on the bike, so adapted, figured out how he could go faster, and then came marching forward again, you know, back into the race. And super cool. I mean, I listened to that because I wanted to be one of those guys one day. So that is something they have. Marc Marquez shows it all the time. They all have this ability to, if the conditions change, if the machinery changes, something's not, they are the ones that adapt and get the most out of it.